There's a kind of love that doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention or make promises it can't keep. It simply sits with you, in silence. My love, I think about you. Those words sound gentle, but sometimes they carry weight. Because thinking about someone isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's exhausting. Or wife, sometimes it keeps you awake at night, replaying moments, conversations, what ifs. Sometimes it traps you in a place where love exists only in your mind, not in reality. And that's where many hearts get stuck. Today, this is not a speech about forgetting someone. It's about freeing yourself from loving someone in a way that costs you your peace. It's about understanding that love should feel like warmth, not anxiety. Like home, not confusion. If you've ever loved deeply, quietly, endlessly, if you've ever thought about someone more than they ever thought about you, this message is for you. Because real strength begins the moment you stop surviving on thoughts and start choosing yourself. I think about you in moments that don't look important to anyone else. While tying my shoes, while staring at nothing, while a song plays that I don't even like anymore, but somehow it reminds me of you anyway. And I wonder when thinking about you became automatic, like breathing, like blinking, like something my mind does without asking my heart for permission. My love, I think about you. It sounds harmless, soft, almost poetic, but there's a weight inside those words that only someone who has carried them understands. Because thinking about someone is never just thinking, it's remembering, it's replaying, it's imagining conversations that will never happen. It's holding space for a version of someone that may not even exist anymore. I didn't plan to think about you this much. It just happened. Slowly, quietly, one thought at a time. One memory slipping in when I least expected it, and then another, until you weren't just a thought anymore, you became a presence in my silence. There's a strange loneliness in loving someone quietly. No one sees it. No one asks about it. There are no arguments, no dramatic endings, no clear lines that say, this is where it stopped. It just keeps going. Inside, unnoticed, unacknowledged. Sometimes I ask myself if you ever feel it too. If you ever pause in the middle of your day and feel something familiar but unnamed. If you ever think of me without realizing why. Or if I've been carrying this alone, mistaking my depth for connection. I used to believe that thinking about someone meant something, that it meant there was a bond, an invisible thread, something mutual even if unspoken. But over time, I've learned that thinking about someone can also mean you're holding on to something they've already let go of. That realization doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't knock. It seeps in through late nights, through unanswered messages, through the way life keeps moving forward without waiting for your heart to catch up. There's a difference between love and attachment. Love gives, attachment clings. And sometimes, when you're not careful, thinking about someone becomes a habit instead of a choice. A place your mind goes because it's familiar, not because it's healthy. I didn't notice when thinking about you started costing me things. My sleep, my focus, my peace. I didn't notice when my happiness began depending on moments that never came. When my mood shifted based on silence. When I started measuring my worth by your absence. That's the dangerous part of quiet love. It doesn't warn you. It doesn't ask for consent. It just slowly rearranges your inner world until everything seems to orbit one person who may not even know they're the center. I told myself it was normal. I told myself everyone thinks about the people they care about. And that's true. But caring should not feel like self-erasure. It should not feel like waiting in a room where no one is coming back. There's strength in admitting this, not weakness. Strength in saying, I think about you, but it hurts. Strength in recognizing when your heart is doing all the work alone. Somewhere along the way, I confused patience with loyalty, silence with understanding, distance with depth. I convinced myself that if I just held on long enough, something would change. But holding on doesn't always lead to growth. Sometimes it just leads to exhaustion. I don't think you ever asked me to think about you this way. And maybe that's what makes it harder, because there's no one to blame, no villain, just two people standing in different emotional places, looking at the same situation through completely different lenses. I think about you, and then I think about myself, about how much space you occupy in my mind, about how little space I've left for everything else, about how many moments I've missed because I was mentally somewhere else, replaying something that already happened, or imagining something that never will. That's when it becomes clear. Thinking about someone isn't always love. Sometimes it's a signal that something inside you is unresolved, unanswered, still hoping. Hope can be beautiful, but unchecked hope can become a cage. It keeps you suspended between what was and what you wish could be, never fully present in what is. I've learned that love should feel grounding. It should bring you back to yourself, not pull you further away. It should make life feel fuller, not smaller, calmer, not heavier. And yet, there you are, still crossing my mind, still showing up in quiet moments. Not because you're still here, but because a part of me hasn't learned how to let go of the version of you I created in my head. That version is kind, attentive, present. That version understands me without explanation, but real people live in reality, not imagination. And loving a version of someone is one of the loneliest things a person can do. I don't hate myself for thinking about you. I don't shame my heart for Karen, but I am learning to be honest with myself about what it means, about what it costs, about what it prevents me from becoming. There's courage in redirecting your thoughts, in choosing not to follow your mind every time it wanders back to the same place, in reminding yourself that peace is more important than familiarity. I think about you, but I also think about the life I deserve, the calm I crave, the love that doesn't require constant mental effort to survive. And slowly, gently, without drama or bitterness, I begin to understand that thinking about you doesn't mean I should keep holding on, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is notice where your thoughts go and decide with compassion to guide them somewhere safer, somewhere lighter, somewhere that finally feels like home, even if that home is just you, sitting quietly with yourself, learning how to breathe again without waiting for a thought of someone else to make the moment feel complete, learning how to sit in silence without filling it with memories, learning how to let your mind rest instead of roam, learning how to be present in your own life instead of living inside the echo of someone who may never return. Understanding that love should not feel like a mental loop you can't escape, but a place where your thoughts feel welcome and at ease. And when you start to notice how often you think about someone, it's not a sign to chase them, but an invitation to look inward and ask what part of you is asking to be seen, to be valued, to be chosen. And maybe for the first time, instead of offering that devotion outward, you turn it gently back toward yourself and allow that thought to soften, to loosen its grip, to fade into something quieter, something kinder, something that no longer demands so much of your inner world, because you are finally learning how to exist fully in your own presence without needing to think about anyone else to feel whole. Thinking about someone should never cost you your peace. I didn't understand that at first. I thought restlessness was part of caring. I thought the tightness in my chest meant depth. I thought love was supposed to feel consuming, like something you surrender yourself to completely, even if it takes pieces of you along the way. But peace leaves quietly. It doesn't announce its exit. One day you just realize you're tired in a way sleep can't fix. Your mind feels busy even when your life is calm. You smile, but there's a delay, like your happiness has to pass through someone else before it reaches you. I think about you, and my body reacts before my mind can stop it. My shoulders tense, my breath shortens, my thoughts scatter. That's when I started noticing the difference between affection and imbalance. Love should settle you. It should slow your breathing, not speed it up. It should make silence comfortable, not loud. But when thinking about someone turns into a constant hum in the background of your mind, something is off. When your peace becomes conditional, something is wrong. I used to check my phone without realizing why. I used to replay conversations, searching for meaning that might not even be there. I used to wake up already thinking about you, as if my mind never slept, as if it stood guard all night, waiting. That kind of thinking isn't romantic. It's exhausting. It's your nervous system staying alert for something that isn't coming. It's your heart waiting for reassurance it may never receive. Peace doesn't survive in uncertainty for long. It erodes slowly, replaced by anticipation, then doubt, then self-questioning. You start wondering if you said too much or not enough, if you cared too deeply or not correctly, if being yourself was the mistake. That's how thinking about someone begins to cost you, not all at once, but in pieces. Your confidence, your focus, your ability to be present where you actually are. I remember moments where everything around me was fine, nothing was wrong, yet inside I felt unsettled, not because of what was happening, but because of what wasn't, because of messages not sent, feelings not clarified, because my mind was filling in gaps that reality refused to close. Peace doesn't require effort. It doesn't need interpretation. It exists where clarity lives. And when your thoughts about someone are louder than your sense of self, peace doesn't stand a chance. I told myself it was normal to miss someone, and it is. But missing someone shouldn't feel like losing yourself. It shouldn't make you question your worth. It shouldn't make your inner world feel unstable. There's a quiet warning sign most people ignore. It's when you feel relief instead of joy at the thought of them reaching out. When your body relaxes because the waiting has paused, not because you feel genuinely connected. That's not peace. That's tension temporarily released. I started noticing how often my emotions depended on you, how a single thought could shift my entire mood, how easily my day could be colored by something that existed only in my head. Peace doesn't live like that. It doesn't swing back and forth. It doesn't disappear the moment someone becomes distant. Peace is steady. And anything that makes your inner world unstable deserves to be questioned, no matter how beautiful it once felt. I think about you, and sometimes the thought feels warm, but sometimes it feels heavy, and weight is not the same as depth. Love can be deep without being heavy. Care can be strong without being draining. When thinking about someone costs you your peace, it means your heart is working harder than it should. It means you're carrying more than your share. It means you're emotionally investing without emotional safety. That's not something to romanticize. That's something to become aware of. Awareness is the beginning of change, not forcing yourself to stop thinking, not judging your feelings, just noticing. Noticing how your body responds. Noticing whether the thought brings calm or chaos. Peace isn't dramatic. It doesn't beg for attention. It's subtle. It's how you feel when you're not overthinking, when you're not waiting, when your happiness isn't tied to someone else's actions. I didn't lose my peace overnight. I traded it slowly for hope, for imagination, for potential. And one day I realized I was living more in my thoughts about you than in my actual life. That realization doesn't come with anger, it comes with clarity. A quiet understanding that something needs to shift, not because anyone is wrong, but because your inner world deserves stability. Thinking about someone should never feel like walking on uneven ground. It should never make you anxious about your own emotions. It should never create a constant background noise in your mind that you can't turn off. Peace is not something you earn by enduring discomfort. It's something you protect by listening to yourself. And when you begin to choose peace, your thoughts start to change naturally, not instantly, not forcefully, but gently. They begin to return to you, to your breath, to the moment you're in. I still think about you, but I notice the thought now. I don't chase it. I don't build a story around it. I let it pass, because my peace is worth more than a mental loop that leads nowhere, worth more than holding on to a feeling that unsettles me, worth more than staying emotionally alert for someone who may never fully arrive. And in that awareness, I start to feel something unfamiliar yet comforting. A calm that doesn't depend on anyone else, a steadiness that grows when I stop feeding thoughts that disturb my balance, a quiet strength that comes from choosing myself again and again, even when my mind tries to wander back to what feels familiar. Because familiarity without peace is not home. And the more I honor that truth, the more I understand that love should not feel like a constant negotiation with your own nervous system, but a place where your thoughts can rest, where your heart doesn't have to brace itself, where your inner world feels safe enough to be still. Choosing yourself is not betrayal. It only feels that way when you've spent too long believing your worth comes from how much you can endure for someone else. When you've trained your heart to stay, to wait, to understand, even when it's hurting. I used to think choosing myself meant walking away angrily, slamming doors, erasing memories, proving something. But it doesn't look like that. Most of the time, it looks quiet, almost invisible. It looks like pausing before responding, like noticing the exhaustion in your own voice, like admitting, without drama, that something isn't sustainable anymore. There's a moment when survival disguises itself as loyalty. You tell yourself you're strong for staying, patient for waiting, deep for feeling so much. And maybe you are, but strength without care turns inward. It starts consuming the very person it's supposed to protect. I didn't choose myself because I stopped caring. I chose myself because I was disappearing, slowly, in ways no one else could see. I was still showing up, still smiling, still functioning, but inside I was shrinking, making myself smaller to keep a connection alive, lowering my needs so they wouldn't seem like demands, explaining away silences, accepting confusion as normal. That's not love. That's endurance. There's a quiet grief in realizing you've been abandoning yourself for someone who never asked you to do that. Grief for the energy you gave, for the time you spent hoping, for the parts of you that learned to stay quiet so things wouldn't fall apart. Choosing yourself begins with honesty, not the kind you announce, the kind you sit with alone, the kind where you finally admit, this hurts more than it heals. Survival doesn't always look like escape. Sometimes it looks like boundaries, like stepping back, like saying no without explaining yourself, like letting someone be disappointed so you don't have to be broken. I used to believe love meant sacrifice, and it does, but not self-erasure, not chronic self-neglect, not living in a constant state of emotional alertness, wondering if today will be the day things finally feel secure. Choosing yourself feels wrong at first, because you've been taught that your value lies in how much you can give, how much you can tolerate. But survival asks a different question. It asks whether you can live with yourself if nothing changes, whether you can keep waking up like this, whether your heart can afford another season of uncertainty. I didn't wake up one day suddenly strong. I just got tired of hurting quietly, tired of explaining my pain away, tired of being the only one holding things together. There's a moment when you realize that staying is no longer noble. It's just familiar, and familiarity can keep you stuck longer than fear ever could. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop bleeding for love. It means you stop negotiating your peace. It means you recognize that surviving emotionally is just as important as surviving physically. I had to learn that my needs are not excessive, that wanting clarity is not insecurity, that asking for consistency is not pressure, and that walking away from what drains you is not failure. Survival is choosing environments where you can breathe, where you don't have to brace yourself, where your nervous system can finally rest. I didn't betray anyone by choosing myself. I rescued something that was quietly drowning. And the strange thing is, when you start choosing yourself, you don't become colder. You become clearer. You stop overextending. You stop waiting for someone else to decide your worth. There's loneliness in that transition. because you're no longer distracted by hoping. You're left with yourself, with your thoughts, with the silence you used to fill with someone else. But that silence isn't empty. It's space, space to rebuild, space to listen to what you ignored, space to remember who you were before you learned to survive by minimizing yourself. Choosing yourself is not dramatic, it's consistent. It's choosing rest over rumination, clarity over chaos, self respect over attachment. I still care, I still remember, but I no longer confuse caring with self sacrifice. I no longer believe love requires me to stay in places that make me question my own stability. Survival teaches you that love should not feel like a test you're constantly failing. It should not make you doubt your intuition. It should not require you to abandon your inner world to maintain connection. And when you finally choose yourself, not loudly, not angrily, but firmly, you begin to notice something shift, a subtle strength returning, a sense of alignment you forgot was possible, a calm that comes from no longer fighting yourself, from no longer forcing your heart to stay where it cannot rest, from understanding that survival is not about enduring everything, but about knowing when it's time to protect what's left of you, to hold it carefully, to stop offering it to situations that cannot sustain it, to stand in the quiet truth that choosing yourself is not the end of love, but the beginning of living in a way that no longer requires you to disappear in order to belong. Letting go doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop feeding the feeling until it controls your life. I used to think letting go was an act of forgetting. Like one day you wake up and the memories are gone, the thoughts are quiet, the ache disappears. But it doesn't work like that. Letting go is much more subtle. It's something you practice, not something you declare. I still think about you sometimes, but I no longer follow the thought to where it wants to take me. I don't sit with it. I don't build a story around it. I notice it, and I let it pass, the same way you notice a cloud without chasing it across the sky. At first, that felt wrong, almost cruel, like I was betraying my own heart by not indulging what it felt. But there's a difference between honoring a feeling and drowning in it. Some feelings ask to be acknowledged, others ask to be released. I realized I wasn't holding on because the love was still alive. I was holding on because letting go felt unfamiliar, because thinking about you had become routine, because my mind knew that path well, even if it always led to the same place. There's comfort in repetition, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts in a way you recognize. Letting go is choosing discomfort now instead of prolonged pain later. It's choosing the ache of absence over the slow erosion of self. It's deciding that just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's meant to stay. I didn't stop caring overnight. I stopped revisiting old moments, stopped rereading words that no longer applied, stopped asking questions that had already answered themselves through silence. That's what letting go looks like most of the time. Not dramatic exits, not closure speeches, just quiet decisions repeated daily. You don't let go once. You let go again and again. Every time the thought returns. Every time nostalgia tries to rewrite reality. Every time loneliness tries to convince you that something broken is better than something empty. There were days when letting go felt heavier than holding on, because holding on gave me something to focus on. Letting go forced me to face the space where you used to be. But that space wasn't empty for long. It slowly filled with clarity, with rest, with a version of myself that wasn't constantly reaching outward. Letting go doesn't erase love. It changes its direction. It brings it back home. I had to learn that not every thought deserves my attention. Not every emotion deserves my energy. Just because my mind remembers doesn't mean my heart has to relive. There's a kind of strength in restraint, in choosing not to reopen wounds just to feel something familiar, in allowing memories to exist without letting them define the present. Letting go is not indifference, it's maturity. It's understanding that love without reciprocity becomes self-neglect, that longing without direction becomes stagnation. I didn't lose anything by letting go. I stopped losing myself, and slowly the grip loosened. The thoughts became quieter, not gone, just softer, less demanding. I stopped measuring time by when I last thought of you, stopped checking my emotions against your absence, stopped waiting for a feeling to change before allowing myself peace. That's when I understood something important. Letting go isn't about the other person. It's about reclaiming ownership of your inner world. You don't owe your thoughts to anyone. You don't owe your emotional energy to memories. You are allowed to rest. There will always be people who mattered, moments that shaped you, but they don't all get to stay with you forever. Letting go is how you make room for calm, for presence, for a life that doesn't revolve around what could have been. And when you finally stop holding on so tightly, you begin to feel something steady underneath the sadness, something quiet but reassuring, a sense that you are no longer fighting yourself, that your mind is no longer trapped in loops that lead nowhere, that your heart is learning how to exist without reaching for something that cannot meet it where it stands. And in that letting go, not all at once but piece by piece, you begin to feel lighter, more grounded, more present in your own life, understanding that release is not loss but a return to yourself, a way of honoring what was without allowing it to consume what is, a way of moving forward without denying the past, a way of living that finally gives your inner world the permission to breathe again.